Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today, focusing in on how to drop the defenses, the defense mechanisms after encountering and moving through really the awareness of narcissistic abuse or psychopathic abuse. In my vast experience with this population and working with those who have been targeted, victimized, abused, scapegoated, had smear campaigns and the like against them from controlling and manipulative people, I have found that this cycle of shaming, of pathological lying, the cognitive dissonance, the really chronic berating and breaking down of people, coupled with an intimate relationship, perhaps even some profound pleasure that has been experienced with the same person, creates very much a cognitive dissonance, basically, which means a state of confusion in a heightened emotional state, which means heightened joy, heightened pleasure, heightened sexual pleasure, gratification, the feeling of being at one with this person, the feeling of enmeshment, and really essentially addiction. And that's a very important concept when it comes to really identifying and working through really deep narcissistic and psychological pathological abuse, such as experience with a psychopath. And remember that the cluster B personality disorders are really on the same rung of character disorders, the cluster B personality disorders, as defined and acknowledged by the psychological community and treated and diagnosed through the DSM-5R. So in terms of the defense mechanisms and how to release those and let those go, it is really it is the development of defense mechanisms, which are essentially activities, behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs that stem around really trying to deal and cope with psychological abuse. Someone who has controlled and manipulated you for however amount of time. I know it varies per each person. However, some people have been experiencing this for years, some for decades, some for really their entire life, if they have really lived within a family that exhibited parental controls that were of this nature, and a cluster B shaming, critical, controlling, perfectionistic sort of environment that pervaded their entire upbringing. So if this is you, chances are then you're also harboring a number of different what we call defense mechanisms, which are also behaviors that are developed and adapted to help protect you, help cope, and help really try to develop a sense of security and self-esteem, really survival after dealing with these types of people. And defense mechanisms were first really essentially developed and coined by the psychologist Sigmund Freud back at the turn of the century, really the father of psychoanalysis, and he developed the concept really of the id, the ego, the superego, and also really had really developed and written quite profusely on the use of projection and some of the other sublimation and the defense mechanisms, these concepts. He really expounded on these as he identified these working in his patients. So what is a defense mechanism? How have you developed this, perhaps in a maladaptive way of dealing with these types of people? Unbeknownst to you, you had fallen into this trap or this behavioral cycle to really be resilient to them. And so, a defense mechanism is a behavior that is used to protect you from dealing with the pain. It's a mechanism that is put in place by you. It's a behavioral mechanism to really keep you kind of in a very much an avoidance state, in a denial state, a self-protected state. And it gives you essentially the short-term feeling that you're dealing with this person when in essence you're not. And so you have to identify these and release these defense mechanisms to really arrive at a true acceptance and experience of healing. So an example of a defense mechanism might be that of compulsive shopping, compulsive codependence traits, where you're not seeing the situation for what it is, and you're perhaps trying to keep a relationship in place that is not meant to be. So you're really viewing things to be more positively than they are, which is keeping you in a situation for longer than you should. And in essence, you're in a state of needing to tolerate it, because even just having them there in your life is easier for you than dealing with the reality and letting them go. So there's a number of different things going on, but it's a defense mechanism to keep you from dealing with your best life, your destiny, your higher self, and really kind of being guided to your correct mate, your correct experience with life, and really get you to be able to feel more comfortable and expand. Defense mechanisms can also occur with habitual smoking, habitual drinking, drugging. These are all defense mechanisms that people employ to really keep them separate from either thinking or becoming more in touch with their authentic self. So they employ these sort of behaviors to keep them basically isolated and insulated from that. Also, we have compulsive TV watching, people who just watch endless array of binge TV. I mean, of course, yes, there's entertainment and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it's a true defense mechanism, when you're like shutting out the world, you're shutting out yourself, you're just keeping yourself really, in a lower vibrational state. That can also be a defense mechanism. People who are shopaholics, I mean, they're just shopping to the point where it's a defense mechanism. They're not dealing with the relationship. They're not dealing with the reality of it. And so they're kind of perpetuating that in their mind, almost getting ready for this relationship to go to the next level, when in essence it's not going to go to the next level. There's other levels in their life that they're meant to transcend to, but they're withholding their life. They're holding themselves back. So, if you find yourself engaging in defense mechanisms, and, you're realizing maybe the role that it has served as a way to protect you and help you heal from your wounds, because oftentimes, these behaviors are developed just to help you deal with the shame and the criticism and the low self-esteem and self-doubt that has been created in your life. So, in essence, these external activities are keeping you from enjoying the internal state of happiness and bliss and peace with yourself, and embracing of your authentic self. And I know that this is like deep psychological stuff, but once you get it, I think you'll find it quite functional and really what you've been searching for, and really kind of like the remedy to get you to that state of being which you've so much been seeking through these defense mechanisms. And once you can drop those and let them go and keep a healthy place for these sort of activities, either through moderation or letting them go totally, once you realize that they're in essence no longer serving you, that they're just keeping you separate from that state of happiness and bliss and self-esteem, which is an internal state, which is your God-given right, which you have to give yourself permission to exist in. Once you're slowly able to release the fear that kept all those behaviors in place, and realize that you do have emotional mastery, you are through meditation and gaining this control and this acceptance and knowledge day by day, you're able to drop those defense mechanisms more comfortably and realize what they were, the role that they were taking in your life, and then own up to it and say, okay, I can let these go now. I now understand their role in my life, and I no longer need those to keep me in a state of chaos conflict consciousness and essentially tied to this narcissistic abuser. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.